Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk about a little catch-22 of Islam, which is a catch-22 of Iman. And I want to explain a little more from my perspective as a woman, as a girl growing up in Islam and feeling the whole spiritual deprivation, exhaustion, how it really felt. So I was someone who grew up in a household and a family that really valued and prized religion and cultures to somewhat extent, but really more prioritized religion. So in my family, even though they came from is from the subcontinent of India, and they had the whole culture, that was also very valuable, but they really over the years when they became also religious themselves, they really prioritized religion, and they were of that thinking that they wanted the whole modern spiritually progressive, but yet somewhat religiously true, and true to the principles kind of Islam, and that's what they were really wanting for us as the kids. So I wanted to explain to you a little bit of that background and growing up in that kind of environment and culture, and as a girl, what that felt like. Um, I can't even say that my parents, like, if my parents were believers of like child marriage or against women's education, that were really the true evils of Islam, even till this today. But they weren't. That was not my experience. That was not my, environment growing up. So I really got like the enlightened spiritually, I would say almost, I wouldn't say liberal, but a little more like what most people want actually out of Islam, like the best version of Islam, really. What was that like growing up, and how that influences you and to have that and that thinking, and you're growing up. And then also, I grew up eventually in Canada, which is a very multicultural and very heavily, Muslim influenced. Even now, if you go there, you'll see that like that's the ideal, basically heaven for Muslim culture. So I wanted to a little bit more go deeper into that experience. What I see as a Muslim woman or girl growing up, I will come to the point where I felt I was married at this time and a mother already, and I had almost come to a point, a breaking point. I had grown up wanting to be spiritually pure as a young girl. Like that was my idea of what Islam wanted from me, what my creator Allah wanted that for me to, grow up. Now, if you go backtrack to like how that actually was ingrained, like that's a whole process, and I didn't even get to that process many years later to really unpack and really examine what was it growing up. I just reached that point where I knew that this point was actually spiritually exhausting. I was emotionally numb, depleted. I didn't feel like I had that um, connection that I had worked so hard towards. So that's really what the catch 22 that I wanted to explain is that Iman basically, that you're kind of told it's your fault, so you're trying even harder and you put in more effort, you follow the rules more strictly, you're really following all the, commandments and all the things that you should feel spiritually nourished. But internally, the truth that most women or most Muslims will not reveal is that they actually don't. They, in fact, start to feel more worse off, depleted, even some level of depression, some just low level anxiety that's constant in the background that they don't even begin to notice it. But that's what's going on actually. And you begin to feel that actually it's more of your own fault. And you are now more blaming yourself. You are more heartbroken. You're just thinking, is it me? Am I broken? So that's kind of the whole loop, the Islam guilt loop that, most people won't tell you about. Like they're honestly not going to talk about that spiritual honesty or uh, that true soul craving for connection, a divine alignment just doesn't seem to happen. What ends up happening, and what also happened to me, was you were really now at your low, right? You're praying almost through the pain. It was extremely painful at that point, and you're just pushing through, and you're really like trying to grab at any thread of emotional divine connection. You're like, I put so much towards, Allah and Islam. And I really just want that, just a little bit of divine threads that I could feel. And it's sorely lacking and missing. You push through, you obey through confusion, even though there are a lot of things that you don't understand, that you don't agree with, that you can't seem to logically, or even after the logic is explained, can't accept it, right? But you're still pushing through to obey. Some things, and most Muslims, what they do is they eventually have rationalized some of it and just, accepted that it was just the times and the thing and the culture and whatever. But a lot of people still don't, and they still follow through obedience. Other truth, which I feel, which is very poignant and very true, probably for men, but very much for women, is that you never feel worthy. Let me explain to you how it is. I mean, I made a video about how Muslim men and women, how that maybe externally shows up, but internally, as a girl, I want to describe to you a thought process that happened to me. Was I When I went back into my childhood and unpacked, you understood that it wasn't like your parents who were doing it or your teachers. It was really just the whole system that was ingrained with it. You are kind of reminded and made aware. That's the best I could describe it. Before, you were not aware that you were like such a different, than a boy or a man, or what was the huge divide here. But you are now slowly made aware that you are actually the woman, and the woman criteria, description, internal world, emotional world in Islam is very um, different than what a natural person or a natural woman feels. So that's what I want to describe, how it felt. It felt that, when I think about it, it felt like you were born with a defect. That's kind of the best way I can describe it, is that it was a very matter of fact, and that's the way things are, that it's the way it is. Just like, other things are explained about why things happen as a woman or a female. It was a very matter of fact, and you were also spiritually, as a soul, as a whole, your entire being was sort of on the back foot already. You were born in a sense of defect. And even though I praise my parents that they did not let that really fester or like really emphasize that point. They were very much protective of that sense. They never had the gender difference play out with my cousins, with my brother, which I had a younger brother much later. So in my early years, I never ever felt it, but I couldn't help noticing it slowly in my environment, in the teachings, and because I grew up in Saudi Arabia, very evident, definitely, in the social, cultural, outside world. And they very much tried to protect it. It was not my parents who actually made me wear the abaya. It was my school. The school that I was going to started in, like, basically getting you towards wearing the abaya at grade 5, grade 6, because all the other girls were also doing it. So you were going to stand out, and it was going to be awkward for you. So it's better that you just naturally step into that cultural garb and norm. And that slow ingrained idea of like suddenly feeling like I'm a defect, my body, my internal emotional world, everything about it is spiritually, unsure about. It could easily distract you away from Iman. It was a path, and for women, it was a sensuality, curiosity, joy. It was a very fickle path towards, like wrong or haram or misdeeds, or just leading you astray. And that's what I think slowly over the years as a woman, that's what it feels like. You are slowly erasing and silencing all your divine feminine ingrained, like the things that you are born with, right? Like the things that you're born with that you didn't choose, that you were created with, are suddenly all one by one being colored or shown in this shade of that. You know what? That's a fitna. It's going to be wrong. It's going to take away. So we manage it, we hide it, we cover it, we just like erase it from ourselves. We start to like basically disconnect from it. That's where the whole spiritual numbness comes for women. I believe, for Muslim women, and I empathize with the Muslim women crying on the mat, spiritually exhausted, emotionally numb, but nowhere near what she needs. She is no closer to Allah. She is already feeling demonized, a villain in her own body, in her own religion, in her own culture. You are just in this race that you never feel that you will ever win, right? You basically have to erase the fact that you are a woman and your emotional needs, your soul craving is all, you have to either somehow erase that, and that's where you win. That's how you are close to Allah, not to God, not to divine alignment, to Allah. Had a lot of moments of curiosity, of deep silence, and that's how I want to explain that I when I was praying on my mat, or like on my janamas, or anywhere, I had a special janamas. Like, it was very beautiful. It was actually from Makkah. It was like a ivory silk type of janamas. It was, I love aesthetics, so that was like part of my whole spiritual experience as well, and that's what I tried to create. I had the most beautiful. I still have it. My tasbih, the beautiful jade, and like all these wonderful type of artistry and beauty, for because that's what I craved, and I was trying to find it in Islam, in the spiritual thing, and my soul was really longing for it. But I never felt it from Allah, from Islam. That's what I want to explain. There is divine alignment, but it felt like it was the only time I felt was when it was quiet. When I was quiet and I was spiritually listening, I allowed my inner authority, the inner authority that most people, most Muslims are never allowed to, access. You have like blocked your own access to it because of the fear of waswasa, the fear of the devil, or it's wrong or anything. You have never spiritually cultivated or allowed access to your own divine inner authority. That's what I want to explain. Most Muslims don't have any internal, like, compass, internal, like a strong soul identity. They're very much needing outside authority, outside, clear instructions, detailed, like to the T, telling you exactly, somebody else who has spiritually, gotten the license to tell you exactly how to fulfill your and nurture your soul and your divine alignment. So as I was mentioning, that when I was on praying in the janamas, really it was like the quiet meditation periods that I had, that when I was not reciting anything from the Quran, nothing from Islam, those were the moments when I had quiet moments of alignment that I can't even explain. In fact, now I understand why a lot of people say ignorance is bliss. Yes, for the Muslim who doesn't know what they're saying, what they're reciting, the meaning, the true words, the ideology, it is a bliss. They are just tapping into that energy of the room of the pure people. The people are not bad. They're tapping into that whole energy, but they're reciting something that they have no clue. They're following the rules that are spiritually starving you. And that's what happens to most Muslim women. The thought that came to me when I saw nature, when I saw all of creation, that the flower, when it's created or when it's growing or blooming, it is never felt that it is a defect, that it is something less, right? It never has that idea. It never feels that it is in a race that they're most likely going to fail. They're in a test that, because they're on the back end, they're more prone to failing. And that's how I can kind of give you what an idea of what spiritually it feels like a woman in Islam. That your beauty, your radiance, your sensuality, your whole divine feminine creation is really you're on the back foot already. It is in a way a defect and a distraction from Iman. When I intellectually ever dismantle and thought more, as I explained in my other videos, is when even in that time, just the people, the worldview that, you know, people had about what is Allah, what is Islam, monotheism, or religion, or just like cultural, deeply steeped ideas. If you just go like 50 miles to one town over, or the, you know, like a little further down to the south, you are met with a completely different worldview. A completely different worldview, just, you know, a little bit further. And now in our time and era, you know, in our time and era, if just going further down, these are just established ideas that you're politely indulging in. The lies and, you know, their delusions that you are just appeasing and politely indulging in. And it is eating away at your soul. And it is all, you know, under this guise of like spiritually you're going to feel fulfilled and strong and, you know, nourished and aligned, but you don't. And if you are here because of that, I want you to know you're not alone and you're not broken. Divine alignment has a very different feeling. It's just, it's like a soul that was, you know, depleted, dehydrated. Like, it's just so nourishing that you know that this cannot be wrong. There is no way, you know, kainat cannot be wrong in this feeling of my soul creation, of feeling the divine alignment. I imagine now that we are more aware, spiritually expanded, if we are to go, now we understand the distinguishing differences in worldview just by language. Just going to a different language, like a different region, really can turn your whole worldview upside down almost. Even today, that was the case definitely a century or like hundreds of years ago, but today even, it has the same impact when you really understand. Just imagine, you know, a different planet, like just going out on a different planet, what would be the differences in the worldview that we have. So this really amazes me, spiritually moves me. I feel so humbled and so grateful for having some spiritual connection that I feel. And I definitely, you know, want you to understand that these are your own choosing, and you can simply awaken. You can do that even in the quiet of your own home. You don't need a whole divine book revelation. You can do that even in your own home, divine awakening. I hope you enjoy this video, and I thank you for being here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.